It's more than just sustenance. We photograph it, we talk about it, it's become part of our culture. We're now joined by two people who've made food a huge part of their lives. Jamie Kennedy of Jamie Kennedy Kitchens and Joshna Maharaj, food activist and chef, and we welcome both of you to TVO. We want to explain to everybody here that every Monday, TVO as a network is basically checking out the food chain, right? Online and on air, we're going to be doing something on the network on the issue of food, and you two are going to contribute to what we're doing here at the agenda from time to time, so we're happy about that, and we want to just sort of introduce you to them in case they don't know you. Right. So let's start with you. Where are you from anyway?
I'm from Toronto.
You're born and raised here?
Born and lived for the first 10 years here. And then I had a 7-year hiatus where I lived in the States and then came back at age 17 and been here ever since.
Been here since age 17. When did you know you wanted to be a chef?
Age 16.
Was that part of why you came back?
No, it just coincided.
Coincided. How did you know at 16? What happened?
Well, I was president of a culinary club in high school, and it captured my imagination. That was really then, you know, that whole idea of gathering people around a table and exchanging ideas, and food being the vehicle for that, or the medium for that. And then that led to discovery of wine too, as part of that. But we'll talk more about that later, I'm sure.
Do you know where that came from? That sort of interest in food?
I don't really know. You know, I mean, I think it was like theatrical. I have a kind of arts background, so my other interest was fine arts photography. So I think they're, you know, fork in the road, fine arts photography, cooking. I interviewed at the CBC, didn't get the job as a assistant cameraman, you know.
And
my dad was
good luck for us that didn't work out.
My dad was a career CBC man, and so he's set me up with an interview
Who's your dad?
CBC. John Kennedy.
Was your dad? I never knew that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I worked at the CBC back in the day.
Okay.
And I don't know if I ever met him, but I certainly heard of him. He was kind of a legend there.
Well, he was there for a long time.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. My goodness, I never knew that. All right.
Yeah.
Good to know.
So didn't get the job, and started applying as a cook. That was the next thing. And
that was the next step.
A job came.
Huh.
An apprenticeship.
All right. Now I definitely remember when you were the poster child, like you were the it guy. You may still be. I mean, you were like the boy wonder for quite a long time in chefing. Is that what you call it? Do you call it chefing, or what do you call it?
How about cooking?
Cooking, okay.
Cooking.
What'd you think of that whole phenomenon, Jamie? Because you were kind of everywhere for a while.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was I think I realized very early on that certainly try not to let that kind of stuff go to your head, because, you know, you just go to work the next day, and so you keep showing up, and that was kind of my MO. Just keep showing up, keep working hard, keep pushing the envelope. I think it was probably 10 years in where I realized that kind of fame around the work could be put to better use than just simply being a poster child for, right, you know, a reference for Joanne Cates when she's writing her reviews. And all respect to Joanne.
Although we love Joanne Cates.
Yes. We love Joanne.
Yeah.
She did amazing things for our culture, our food culture in the city, and for me personally, launched my career, really, you know. I mean, well, you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. And but then I thought, you know, there are more interesting and more powerful ways to translate maybe some ideology around food, where food comes from, food politics, and use that fame more in that direction. So in a sense, like Joshna, I became a bit of an activist in food.
Right.
As well as being
Which is what has led you to us, because we're going to talk about all those things.
Great.
Okay, let's find out about you. Where are you from?
I was actually born in South Africa and moved to Canada when I was a year and a half. So vast majority of my years I've spent here, living in the GTA.
So you have obviously no memories of South Africa.
Not living there, no. Visiting, yes, but not living there as a little one.
Now, do I call you a chef as well? I mean,
yes,
I know you're
sure.
part chef,
yes,
but you've also got this kind of food activist title.
I do.
Okay, what's that about?
So a short end of a longer story is that my love of food, I mean, okay, look, Bottom line is, I'm the oldest female child in an Indian family. So there's no way I was escaping the kitchen, right? That is clear. From the moment I could walk around and get onions from the basement or whatever it was, I was in the kitchen.
How many siblings?
One younger brother.
Okay.
Lots of aunties, lots of cousins, and that's really where it all started, right? I was always an extra pair of hands required to do something.
So you're around it all the time growing up.
Yeah. There's no question. But after I graduated from university, I didn't really know what I was going to do with myself. And so I convinced my parents to let me spend a year living in India in an ashram in the mountains. Yes.
And you're how old at this point?
I am 24.
Okay.
And at that point, I thought I was probably going to be an academic, right?
It's funny how you say I had to convince my parents to let me do that, because 24 is the age majority.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
But I'm Indian, Steve.
That's right. So the
It's a bit of a different
parental
vibe.
permission was a big deal. Okay,
Yes.
I got it.
So I convinced them to let me go and do this, which they were cool with. And then while I was there, in the very small, humble kitchen that existed there, they were short-staffed one day, and as far as they were concerned, I was sitting around doing nothing, and how was I going to find a husband, and all these other questions. So they dragged me into the kitchen and put me to work. And one thing led to the next, and I completely fell in love with all of it.
Does a light bulb go on?
Yes.
That's what happens.
Oh my goodness.
So it's not
yes.
a gradual thing.
For me, it wasn't. For me, it was a like, oh, I love this. And then it was like, oh, I could get paid to do this. This could be a thing.
But then there's a next step for you, which is not only do I love this, I could get paid to do this, but I need to be an evangelist about this.
Yeah, that grew later.
That came
That
later,
grew
okay.
later, right? Because of the context in which my love of food began, it was very distanced from any sort of crisp, white, fine dining kind of vibe, you know? And from moment one, even after I left cooking school, I was so much more interested in how everybody was eating, right? And particularly why not everybody had great food on the table. So really, out of the gates, I dove into community food security work. That's really my thing.
What does that mean?
So that is again figuring out accessibility. What people are eating when they're not in restaurants. You know what I mean? Like what everyday home food is like. Why not everybody has a good meal on the table? What's standing in the way of that? And thinking broader about our food system, our resilience, our ability as a province to produce food for ourselves and to nurture ourselves that way. And that rolls into a big, beautiful conversation.
What's interesting about the two of you, if I may make this observation, is that you are similar in interests, you have similar passions, you're a very kind of low-key, calm, mellow personality, and you are larger than life, right? Like you're out there.
It's true. It's true.
For people who do what you do, are more people like you or more people like him?
That's a good question.
Well, I'll
What do
tell
you think?
Well, my training was in this classic hotel, European hotel style. In Toronto in those days, there weren't really any Canadians
Right.
holding positions of sway
Right.
in the city. Of course, that's all changed. But at that time, the status quo was expat Swiss, French, German, Italian, and they brought with them this long tradition of apprenticeship and master, practically slave or indentured servant, you know. That relationship. So you need to pay your dues, you need to put up and shut up.
And did you do all that?
Yeah, you know, and for me it was such a swing because I'd come from a liberal high school where I was expected to think and have ideas and express ideas, and in that environment you did anything but that. You followed instructions. Your opinion was not asked. So it was a real flip for me. But you know, roll it back to your introduction with me and age 17, starting in the kitchen. I was young. I was also immature in the sense of I was a shrimp. I'm a little guy. I was a little guy, and I'd graduated high school because earlier in my school time I'd accelerated and skipped a year and all that kind of thing, and so it put me finished with high school at age 17, back into a new city. Didn't feel like enrolling right away in university. My parents concurred. They thought, you know, Jamie, great idea. You want to go and travel in Europe and, you know, maybe work for a bit before you go, knock yourself out. You can defer, you know, enter university as a 18-year-old rather than a 17-year-old.
That was very far-sighted of them.
No, the best thing though was when I came back with the job offer, which is a 3-year job offer, because an apprenticeship takes 3 years. They were equally supportive, and they said, go for it. At a time when, you know, the trade of cook, for kind of a liberal backgrounded family, there were academics themselves, my parents. It was unorthodox, but they encouraged me to do it.
There is this impression we have nowadays, I think encouraged by a lot of the food shows that are on other channels, of head chef as, I mean, as you pointed out, as dictator.
Yes.
Is that a stereotype, or is that really the way it is?
Well, it was the way it was.
It was.
Definitely. And that's why I think I was getting back to your answer. I sort of used that experience to decide if I ever became in a position of leadership, that that's not how I would lead. You know, because it was an atmosphere, an environment of fear.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, you didn't really use your brain. You know, you're never really totally there, and I didn't want that. I wanted to engender a more relaxed environment, not in the sense of, you know, hey, we're just here to fool around, but you don't have this oppressiveness in the workplace.
You might get a better performance out of people if you don't
Exactly.
treat them like crap.
Yeah.
Well, this is it, right? I never understood how you'd see young cooks getting yelled at and their like hands are trembling as they're trying to chop. Like, how is that food gonna taste afterwards? You know what I mean? All that anxiety and fear is going into what would otherwise be a beautiful dish. I was convinced that that's not the only way to produce beautiful food, right?
So that's the politics of the kitchen. How about culinarily speaking?
Yes.
What's the biggest change in what you've noticed over the last couple of decades, the way things have worked?
You mean within the working of the
Yeah,
kitchen itself? Everything has changed, right? Different people are in the kitchen. I think that over the last years we've seen far more women at the helm, and it's a really interesting decision that women have to make, because we have to kind of decide to be like that, right? It's where it perhaps may have come more naturally to men as leaders in kitchens. Women have to figure out how to lead a kitchen and whether or not we want to adopt this really angry persona so as to get the respect and compliance of the team, or if we want to try another approach.
And there is a more collegial way to run things.
Yes, there is. But it's not easy. It's not easy.
What's the biggest shift in food culture that you have seen in the time you've been doing what you've been doing?
In the same question, in leadership in kitchens, or
I
in
would
general
go
on the
more
scene?
broadly. Yeah, on the scene.
Yeah, I think there's been a sort of a collective consciousness about food that's evolved, say, in the last 3 decades that I've witnessed. I've sort of been watching for 4, but it really started to accelerate for me sort of mid-'80s, '90s, into the 2000s. In the sense that people cared more about food. They're much more interested in dining out, having an experience that was outside the home. You know, this was really good for us because it really raised the bar in terms of the quality of food being served in restaurants and a level of service being provided in restaurants. We also saw much more representation. Us being a multicultural city, it wasn't really until the last 20 years where you actually were aware of that multiculturalism in restaurants, because there weren't all that many people doing things from their culture available to the population in general. A lot of it happened behind closed doors in people's homes.
We're at a time of year when people have just made their New Year's resolutions, and they are thinking about whether they still want to keep them.
Yes.
So
right.
let's put a few on the table here. In terms of food, what do you think people should be resolving to do in this new year?
I would love it if we could put a bit more of a positive spin on the resolution, particularly the ones around food.
Meaning what?
Because the way it exists right now is that there's sort of a message that you are bad and that you have some bad habits, that you had some indiscretions recently over the holidays, right? And that you have some bad habits that you need to grit your teeth and soldier through to change to be a better version of yourself. And I feel like that's a lot. And it's heavy unnecessarily. I would like to suggest that people could resolve to do things that are much more positive and joyful, like resolve to devote one night a meal to cooking dinner for yourself and turn the screens off while you eat it.
One night a week.
Well, just do that, right?
Make a nice dinner.
Make a good
Take the
dinner.
time.
Yeah.
Don't put the TV on.
Have a conversation with somebody across
At 8
the
o'clock, it's
table.
okay, but not before that.
That's exactly
Yes, okay.
it.
Just be clear. We
Yes.
don't mind them turning on the TV at 8 o'clock on
Right.
TVO.
Exactly.
Okay, and that's sort of take the guilt out of it and make it a more positive thing.
Yeah, because you can make choices and food choices that will have beautifully positive impacts on your life. And it doesn't have to be about gritting your teeth and like, I'm not going to eat any of this. Think about the other context around which we eat. It's not just what you're putting in your mouth, but how that food got there and how you prepared it.
Fascinating. Okay, Jamie, what would you add to that list?
What would I add to that list? Well, I'm a cook, and of course I love cooking and I love what happens around the table, and I despair how little that actually happens in the home, especially as time goes on and children become more, they move off in their own directions, and often parents become a la carte cooks for their kids, and you know, this kid's having this kid's having that. It's a different story.
It's amazing parents do that, isn't it? That
really
they indulge in
is.
that.
It really is.
Yeah.
What happened to one meal for everybody and we're all going to eat
This
it
is
together?
what's for dinner, yeah.
And I wasn't allowed to leave the table until I choked down those
No,
fish,
me
those fish
neither.
sticks.
Yeah, me neither.
And then hold my nose while I was drinking that powdered milk. No, but along the same lines, actually, is what Joshna was saying. I think we've captured a bit of a zeitgeist here. Us as workers in the local food movement would love it, and I'd love it to see people pick up raw ingredients. Let's not purchase processed food. Let's pick up raw ingredients.
Go to farmer's market.
Yeah,
Yeah, go to
even in
farmer's
January,
market.
there are lots of beautiful things
Yeah.
there, right?
Yeah.
Don't think that just because it's the winter, there's not enough there.
Yeah, and kind of like shift thinking about how you spend your time. So, you know, spending a couple of hours preparing dinner, is that such a bad thing? I don't think so. Like it's relaxing. You get better and better at it the more you practice it. You actually save money.
You do.
All kinds of good things.
We have somehow gotten to the point where food represents, for some of us anyway, fuel that you got to put in your body to
yeah.
keep going, and never mind all of the beautiful, the culture around it,
absolutely.
and the experience, and the friends and family that go into helping you make it. So I think you've got to encourage us, the two of you, to recapture that sense over the ensuing
it's
time.
about so much more than just filling the tank.
Yeah,
right? So much.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Okay, to you two, we appreciate today, and we look forward to many more visits in the future, so that we can really appreciate everything around food that you have to offer. So thanks so much.
Amazing. Thank you.
Jamie Kennedy, Joshna Maharaj.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.